So on a lathe, we turn the workpiece as opposed to turning the tool. So in order for this to work, we need to have a good way of holding our stock into the spindle. And the way we have this set up is by using a collet closer. I've taken a collet closer out of one of the other machines so I can kind of explain to you how this whole mechanism works. For the collet closer to work, okay, this is the collet closer that's been removed from the headstock. We're going to need a collet that matches the size of your workpiece. So this should be able to slide into the collet. All right. And you're going to notice that on the collet, the end is threaded. Okay. The inside of the collet closer is also threaded to match the threads on our collet. So when we load this into the headstock, we're going to spin this collet into the collet closer. Okay, we're going to insert our workpiece, okay, to whatever distance or extension we want, and we're going to work this lever. This lever is going to pull the collet closer into the headstock. And when we pull or draw this into the headstock, okay, if you look closely at a collet, you'll notice that it's got a series of slits cut in it. So when I pull on the lever of the collet closer, it draws this back into the spindle, forcing those slots to get squeezed down and clamp around our workpiece. And that is what's going to physically hold our stock while we're turning it. So we're going to take a second here, put this all back together, and I will show you how to load it into an actual machine. All right, we're ready to go ahead and load our part into our spindle. I've got my collet that is sized for my workpiece. Step number one is to make sure that the collet lock is disengaged. That's this pin here. If you spin the pin and turn the collet, it will engage. If this is engaged, you cannot tighten the collet down. So we need to make sure this is pulled out and rotated. Okay? We also want to make sure that the collet lever is in as far to the right as it can possibly go. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your collet and you're going to find the slot that's on the collet. That slot is going to align with a pin that's inside the spindle. So I'm going to place this in here and turn it until that slides in. Now what I'm going to do is over here, I'm going to kind of cup my hand over so that the collet can't fall out. And with my right hand, I'm going to begin to spin this collet closer until I thread the collet into the closer itself. Now it'll get snug, and what you're going to do at this point is when it becomes too snug to tighten, you're going to watch the collet as I engage and disengage the collet lock, and I'm going to continue this motion until I start seeing this collet get drawn in to this spindle. Now, with the collet closer open, okay, to the right hand side, I'm going to take my workpiece now and I'm going to put it into the collet. And I'm going to set it so that I have the minimum amount of material sticking out that I need. Once that's in, I'm going to continue to tighten the collet closer and work this lever until I get a specific resistance. Okay, I'm going to work this. Now I can't close it all the way. That means I'm too tight. So I'm going to loosen it, back this up a little bit, check it. Now there. It should take a little bit of force to lock that. It takes a little effort. Okay, when I like the pressure it takes to go ahead and lock this collet closer, I'm going to loosen it, and I'm going to engage my locking pin by turning it and turning this until it seats inside an indexing hole. Once that's locked, I finish by by pushing that collet closer closed. Now as I turn the machine on, all of this will spin as one. To take your part out, you just reverse the steps. We unlock the collet closer, we pull out our indexing pin, and we rotate the collet closer in the opposite direction. Now you'll notice as I'm unthreading this, okay, the collet closer is coming out. When it comes out a little ways, I'm going to gently or gingerly wrap on that to loosen the collet up and get my workpiece out. Now to get the collet out, I need to continue unthreading this until the collet pops out. This is one of those processes that's going to take a little bit of practice. Alright, we've loaded a part. The next thing we have to do is load our cutting tool. Each lathe is going to have its own set of cutting tools. Okay? They'll be kept on the lathe themselves. We have what is called a quick change tool post. Okay, that's this gentleman here. What we're going to do is make sure these are cleaned out and the dovetail ways on the tool post are clean. This simply slides on and we engage the dovetails with that lever. Now the trick with loading a tool correctly, okay, is we want to check three things. We want to check to make sure that our height is directly on center line with the center of our cutter, or excuse me, our workpiece. So if we need to change that, okay, that is adjusting this screw right here. Each tool though should be set for your particular lathe, but it's something worth checking. The other thing we need to check is the angle that we're cutting. Our cutter is at in relation to our workpiece. If you loosen this top nut, you can pivot the tool post in whatever orientation you want. The goal is to set this up so that when you're cutting, you are only cutting at one point of the tool. So you can see I'm only cutting at the very tip if I move left and right now. And if I go to cut the end of my workpiece, okay, I want to make sure that I'm only touching at the very tip there. Now you can see the angle or the relief behind here is very small, but that's enough for what we're doing in here. So I'm good with my relief angle going in and out, and I am also good with my relief angle going left and right. Once those are set, you will take and gently snug this up, trying not to move the tool post. Again, this doesn't take a ton of pressure. Okay, this is an awfully large wrench, so just a little snug will lock that in place. Okay, and you can always come in and double check to make sure that you are only contacting at the tip of your cutting tool, okay, based on the direction that your cut is going to occur at. To remove it, all you do, unlock, lift it up, put it away, okay, and you can retrieve your next tool, okay, and adjust accordingly. Another tool we might need to load is a drill chuck or a live center. Drill chucks and live centers go into the tailstock here. To load these in or out, first thing we're going to do is we're going to lock the tailstock so it can't slide on us. We're going to extend the quill a little bit. Okay, we're going to lock the quill. Okay, that way nothing on here is going to move. Because to load a live center, which is this device here, okay, we actually have to jam that into the quill. The way this works is what's called a Morse taper. This shank is slightly tapered. That taper matches a taper on the inside of that quill. And believe it or not, all that holds this in place is friction. So I'm going to place this in here and I'm going to give it a little shove, and that is firmly held in there. To remove your tailstock, you are going to unlock the quill and you are going to back the quill off with this hand wheel until the tailstock slides right out. Please make sure you re-advance the quill for the next person. To load a drill chuck, it's the same. However, the drill chucks have a tang on them, and those tang will fit into a slot inside here. So when you load this, okay, just like with the Lathe Center, you're going to have to find, okay, you're going to have to spin this until you find where that tang is, and kind of when you have it oriented, give it a little jab, and it'll be held in place. Again, to remove it, unlock the quill, back it up until that pops right out. Now that we have our tool loaded and our part loaded, we need to talk about turning the machine on and getting the correct speed. We have a gear-headed lathe, which means we need to set the gearing in the headstock to a specific RPM before we turn it on. If we turn the machine on and try and change the speeds, we're going to mash gears and destroy the gearing inside of the headstock. So you need to know what RPM we need to be set at. Let's say we want to be at 540 RPM. Okay? We're going to line up the white dots on each of these knobs so that they correspond with the correct cell on our RPM grid. To change these, you're going to press in and turn and let them out. They should lock in place. If you don't quite get there, okay, you should still be able to turn them until they engage. Okay, so right now I've got the white dot on the center line, which lines up with the center row. I want to line up with the farthest right column, so I'm going to press in and rotate until my white dot is on my farthest right column. Okay, the intersection of those two is at 540, which is the RPM that I want. So set your RPM first, and then you're ready to go ahead and turn the machine on. Make sure you unlock the emergency stop. Just give it a little twist. Okay, and now this red knob is your on-off switch. To turn the machine on forward, which is the direction we're always going to want to use, we're going to pull out and go down with a lever. If for some reason we had to cut in reverse, we would go out and up with the lever. To turn it off, you're just going to return this knob to the center position. So that'll look something like this. Okay, that's for forward. That is for reverse. In the event of an emergency, okay, this bar down here is a brake emergency stop. Okay, we don't want to use it if we don't have to, but if something is going terribly awry, you step on this to turn the machine off, or you can hit the emergency off button here. So if I'm cutting and something goes wrong, I can hop on that to shut the machine off. We just have to remember to come back and turn the machine off there.